And you're live.
Okay, and hello, and welcome to QuaranCon. My name's Neil Williamson, and I'm going to be doing a reading for you. Um, Before I get started, I've got some QuaranCon housekeeping to give you. Um, let's get my list up. Okay, the thing you need to do if you're new to QuaranCon, or if you're not new to QuaranCon but you haven't done it for a while, is check out the QuaranCon2020.com website, on which you will find the code of conduct, which I'm going to be obeying, and which, if you're going to leave any messages or questions in the chat, I'd like you to do as well. But also on the website, you'll find the schedule for the rest of the con, which is the rest of today and tomorrow. You will find news about the book sale, which has a whole list of great books, which are either free or 99 cents or 99 pence. You'll find news about the QuaranCon anthology, which is in the book sale and very much worth picking up. I did, and I've been enjoying it so far. And you will also find the QuaranCon merch stuff. So if you're really into all the things QuaranCon, go and check all of that out. As I said, yeah, my name's Neil Williamson, and I'm going to be reading to you. What am I going to be reading? I'm going to be reading from my new book. My new book is called Queen of Clouds, and it looks a bit like this. Admire the beauty. Queen of Clouds is it's a fantasy novel, but it feels a little bit science fictiony sometimes, except the bits that feel more fantasy-ish. And it's a sort of loose prequel to a book that I had out a few years ago now, called The Moon King, which looks a little bit like this. Okay. The Moon King, both of them are published in really handsome editions by Newcon Press in the UK. And The Moon King was shortlisted for the British Science Fiction Association Award for Best Novel and the British Fantasy Award for Best Fantasy Novel. Thought that was a nice thing. Queen of Clouds was published officially on Tuesday, so it's brand new. We had a lovely launch for it in Waterstones in Glasgow, where I'm from, and that was a lovely thing as well. So it's been a really nice week, and QuaranCon is just icing on the cake. So I'm very glad to be here, doing all this for you. Now, let me tell you a bit about Queen of Clouds. Queen of Clouds, like I say, it's a loose prequel to The Moon King. The Moon King is a book in which the world is flooded, right? And it's flooded both with water and sort of weird magic-y stuff, which is not really explained during the course of The Moon King. So Queen of Clouds is my attempt to satisfy my agent's curiosity and explain myself how the world became to be flooded, but also how it came to be imbued with all the sort of weird magic-y stuff. So it's going to be it was an interesting book to write from that point of view. It kind of sort of in the writing turned into something a bit of a climate fiction novel, which is something I didn't intend to do. But as soon as I latched onto the idea, the main concept in the book, which is that there's stuff in the world that is bringing sentience to different parts of nature, and the weather has become sentient, and the weather has become sentient at the level of 2-year-old kids who are really bratty and really needy, and there's a lot of foot stamping going on, kind of thunderous foot stamping, that sort of thing. So that's really where it all took off. So, okay, I think what I'm going to do is read you. I've got a passage here, it's actually from roughly the middle of the book. I read some of the early stuff, the early book stuff, on Thursday at the launch party. But I think for you guys, because it's quite late here tonight, it's like 11 p.m. in the UK, and it feels kind of dark and gothy, and a little bit moody. I'm going to read you the sort of dark, gothy, moody bit. And this is where the two main protagonists, Billy, who's kind of hapless farm boy who's ended up going to the big city, not really to seek his fortune, more against his will, but he's going to find his fortune anyway, and it's not going to be what he's really expecting. And his friend, I guess she's a friend at this point. Her name's Paraphernalia, and she's the niece to a woman called the Queen of Clouds, who is the leader of one of the town's guilds, one of the city's guilds, who are the people that make the weather. They're called the weather makers. And they're at this point in the story, they've got to a point where the weather is getting out of hand, and they're going to have to do something about it. So I'm just going to copy this across, so I'm not looking at not being distracted by the comments in the text. I'll come back to the comments in the text at the end of the reading. If you have any questions, please ask. Love questions, love answering questions. And the only thing you need to know is, for the purposes of this reading, I'm going to be doing it all in a bad Scottish accent, which is just my accent. So here we go. Deep among the hedges, they came to another gate. This one paint-scabbed and rusted. And beyond it, they found a staircase whose steps were slimy with moss and crumbling from neglect. The sleet came on harder as they climbed. Billy pulled his collar up again, but failed to prevent the ice from finding a way in. At the top of the steps, they found a forgotten street. The rubble-strewn stretch of road choked with weeds and bordered by aged tenement blocks. In such a state of disrepair, it was a wonder that they still stood, had at some point been blocked off by the back of another thoroughfare. A high wall of dirty, windowless brick. At the far end, sealing it off from the city and leaving it to the drifting skeins of green gold beetles that gyred and sparkled through the freezing rain. Vern would have been in his element in this place. You're kidding me, Billy said. Surely no one lives here. Para's disquiet was undisguised now. Look, I don't like this, she said, but we have to take whatever opportunities remain open to us, no matter how unlikely. She touched his temple with surprising gentleness. What's in here, she said, what you can do, we need to be able to do that too. Billy's mouth went dry. You mean hear the clouds, talk to them, and control them if we can? I'm really not sure. Neither am I, Para said. But the Queen has finally acknowledged that the cloud's intelligence is the root of our problem, so we have to try. She licked her lips nervously. And Billy, this is important. No one must ever know about what we're about to do. If anyone finds out, it will be the end of the family, the absolute end. It struck him as commendable that her priority remained her family, even though doing this upset her so much. Is that serious? She took a shuddery breath. This goes so against the law that I can't believe we've been asked it. But it's for the good of the family, do you understand? Billy had the impression that she was trying to convince herself as much as him. And before we go any further, I want to ask your permission. If you'll do this for the family, for me, for the weather makers, no. For her? Billy shrugged as if that disguised his readiness to agree to this, whatever this might be. It's the Queen's command, isn't it? She served him another sad look, but took his reply for assent. Come on, she said. Under the glowering clouds, the street looked desolate. Billy had never seen a habitation so neglected. The windows were dull eyes. Short flights of stairs lolled from gaping doorways like the tongues of the dead. Para counted along and chose one, climbing the steps and entering the dark hallway. They left their umbrellas by the door. What is this place? His words bounced off tiles, coming back to him harsh and amplified. Para produced a lamp from her pocket, wound it briskly. It cast an insipid glow, just enough to see their way to the stairs at the end of the passage. The steps had once been mosaicked, but there were so many missing pieces the design was lost to the ages. There had been a banister too, but little of that remained. Ascending, Billy and Para smelled the rancid candles on the next floor before they saw their light. They were smoky and misshapen, one every few stairs, and odd shadows dogged the climbers until they stood before the door on the very top floor. Para pocketed her lantern and looked to Billy. Her mouth was puckered into a dry cinch, her eyes wavering with uncertainty. She took a breath and pushed open the door, and immediately Billy wished he was somewhere else. There were signs that this place might once have been a respectable, even nice family home, but that had been long ago. Now it was a ruin. The trail of candles continued down a short hall, illuminating wallpaper heavily inked over with obscene drawings. The carpet was a hodgepodge of stitched together materials, the clashing textures and designs further obscured by a fur of grime. At the end of the passage, another door. This one enough ajar that light threaded the jamb. This light was harsher than the candles, and it pulsed arrhythmically like an old man's heartbeat. A pale shadow slid past them then, an animal, mottled flanks tattooed with a plumage of blue feathers. It nevertheless attempted to carry itself with the haughty grace of all its kind, its bald tail waving behind it like an imperious finger. At the door, the cat turned and delicately dropped the thing it had been carrying, a starling with glossy feathers and a broken neck. The beast regarded them for a second, then Billy heard it speak, not in his head like the Sylvans, but aloud. Its voice was a pleasant baritone. Which sister, Sin or Skin? Para licked her lips, then said, Sin, Sister Sin. Follow then. The cat picked up the dead bird and led them into a long room, strung with slow pulsing bulbs. From the suspended cables dangled sheets of fabric, a maze of muslin that grew near opaque in the centre. Around the walls were propped age-scratched mirrors from 100 different boudoirs and hallways and bathrooms, and these echoed the pulsing lights. The lighting cables were attached to an odd contraption placed between two boarded-up windows, a generator hooked up to a pyramid of ribbed wheels. Inside the wheels were more of the cats, and the light ebbed and flowed as the animals sped up or slowed, leapt lithely from one wheel to the next, or dismounted altogether. The other cats watched as Billy and Para followed the first cat down the side of the room. Underfoot, the dank carpet was replaced by rough boards littered with odd things. A granite mortar bowl sparkled with fragments of beetle shell, a row of oil lamps that had left sooty scorches on the muslin, a neat row of bottles, and a pot that contained a fist of scrimshawed implements, needle tips lashed to bone handles. Something about these sparked recognition, but Billy couldn't recall of what. The path was littered too with clawed feet and skeletal wing fans and desiccated bird heads, and when the cat led them nimbly around a small furnace, Billy's boot snapped a piece of debris. Who is it? The voice was a scratchy mezzo. Is it canvas? Nice, clean canvas for Sister Skin. There was a rustle from the hanging sheets, and a tall, skinny silhouette appeared. Bastapol, bring it here for Skin. If the cat was Bastapol, it chose not to obey. Instead, it scampered the remaining distance to the end of the room, where there stood another door. This one has scratch marks at the bottom, and the cat added to them with a noisy display. Para took the hint and pushed. This room was more intimate than the first. The occupant, who Billy deduced to be Sister Sin, watched their entry from a decayed couch. In the slow pulse of the room's only bulb, he saw that she was young, but wore a weariness that made her appear older. Her black hair scraped back and threaded into cornrows, her body tiny inside those baggy cotton pajamas, a general air of exhaustion. "Thank you, Master Paul," she said to the cat as the door swung shut. Then to Billy and Para, she indicated a second couch. "Please sit and pay no mind to my sister. She gets jealous that my services are more popular than hers." "Why?" Para whispered. Billy had never seen her so discomfited. "Because my gifts are invisible, Weathermaker. Skins proclaim themselves." Billy thought she was making some sort of joke, but there wasn't even a hint of a smile. "Now, to the point of things, you're not some silly little girl wanting to forget an indiscretion. And you've achievements enough not to require a lie laid so deep inside you that you believe it yourself, so come on." As she said this, her gaze alighted on Billy for the first time. "What is this curious thing you bring me?" "This is Billy Braid." Para shot him a beseeching glance, asking his permission again. At the mention of his name, Sister Sin's red-rimmed eyes came alive. "He has a skill that we're anxious to learn," Para continued. "He can talk to the clouds." And I think we'll leave it there. So thank you all for listening. Any comments, questions, anything at all? I suppose I should fill while I'm waiting for the chat to do its thing. Oh, thank you. That's nice. There's a something I can fill about is I have read this passage before. It was I read it a couple of times when the book was still being written, and when I just finished the first draft and sent it to my agent, and or when I finished the draft that went to my agent, let's put it that way. And so several people have heard it like several years ago now, because it's been a long gestation period for this book. But that's one of those things that sometimes in a very early draft, there's one scene that stays the same, and that's pretty much the one scene in this book. And I'm really, really fond of it. It's a favorite of mine. Maud asks, "What are your greatest influences, and what are you reading now?" Two entirely different questions. I'll take them one at a time. I don't know any more about my influences. I changed the people I read, like I changed my socks, and I've read so many people over the years. I've taken little bits from this person and that person. I guess one of the ones that sticks around is M. John Harrison, and I would say I'm probably as equally influenced by his Vericonium, his famous Vericonium stuff from the 70s and 80s, as I am by his more sort of contemporary fantasy stuff. And his last book, The Sunken Land Begins to Rise Again, and that's the title, was just magical. I really loved that book. So I guess you can see bits there, but I also picked things up from friends, people like Hal Duncan's a friend, and we share. I've picked up little bits and pieces from him. I guess I didn't think about it when I started writing this book. This book features paper and ink in a key plot fashion, and Hal's vellum and ink diptych of novels were were huge. I guess I was hugely impressed by them when he wrote them, and they must have stuck around. So this is, I guess, partly this is my take on what he did. And people like Jeff Vandermeer as well. I love Jeff's material, and also Jeffrey Ford is another influence. And what am I reading now? I'm reading a book by Shona Kinsella called Ashiel Rising, which is I would say prehistoric, sort of definitely old times, pre-modern, pre stuff. it feels very Bronze Agey fantasy, which is really nice. It's got a lovely heart to it, and I recommend it. Her books are that book is about to be reissued along with its sequels, so look out for those. Kitvaria says, would you recommend starting with this prequel or book one? In my head, I can't think of them out of sequential order, but I guess from a reader's point of view, it doesn't make a difference because there's no continuation of character. It's just a case of one leads to the other. So either you read the Moon King first, and then you get a question answered when you read Queen of Clouds, or you read Queen of Clouds first, and you see a progression now that you know that the Moon King is in a flooded world. It's flooded with weirdness. There's definitely the ending of Queen of Clouds is definitely leading up to things that happen in the Moon King, but it's like half a millennium later, so there's no actual continuation. Up to you, whatever you fancy. You might get the Moon King cheaper at the moment. I don't know. Claire asks, what was the spark for this book? And how do your story ideas generally come to you? Well, the spark is an easy one. When I'd finished the Moon King and we were getting it published, we had a chat with the agent, my agent John, and he said, "Be good to have something sort of lined up, at least in kind of planning stages of something that could be related to it in case anyone wants 2 books, kind of thing." I said, "Well, I could write the story of how it came to be." So really, it was how did the world become flooded? That was the spark. And that led me down the route of, well, the weather became sentient and threw the toys out the pram, big style. So what it actually ends up being is a story of the kind of frustration that all of us who are trying to do ecological things, like things that will help the planet kind of not overheat at the moment, is the frustration that we feel of doing the things that we can do while the people who have power aren't listening. That's essentially the heart of the book. It's become a kind of eco fable more than anything else. But it's not as serious as that, honestly. There's some fun stuff in there as well. How do my story ideas generally come to you? I don't know. Stuff just goes into your brain, yeah, and eventually things come out. I just started. Interestingly enough, I wrote the first 2 paragraphs of my new novel, the one I'm writing now officially. I wrote that this morning, early this afternoon, and I didn't start writing until I knew there had to be 2 ideas. I had one idea for ages. I forget enough time for this story. I could probably just about do. So, little sidebar. I'm also a musician, and I do a thing every February called February Album Writing Month, which is essentially the indie songwriter equivalent of NaNoWriMo, right? So you get a month, February, and you got to write an album's worth of songs, nominally 14 songs. And over the last couple of years, I've produced a little album at the end. And so the first of those albums 2 years ago was called, was an album about ghosts, all songs about ghosts. And the album's called The Disappointed Skeptics Club. And the artist name I released it under was also The Disappointed Skeptics Club. And The Disappointed Skeptics Club is what happens to the people who really, really, really don't believe in ghosts when they die. They go essentially to a secluded purgatory kind of pub backroom kind of place where they just get to grumble about not being able to contact people. Now they actually realize that ghosts do exist. And there's people like Harry Houdini's there, and James Randi and Harry Price and all the art skeptics, but also your run-of-the-mill lay skeptics as well. So I had this idea for a song, and I made it into a song, and it was fine. It's quite a light-hearted song. It's quite arch, and then laterally, I think during the course of last year, I thought, yeah, actually, that's a good idea. I could actually turn that into something and actually make a proper book out of it. So I had that idea, but I needed another idea, and the other idea came to me Thursday or Friday, and I've been mulling it for a couple of days. And that was enough. That's I think it's just an accumulate. So in order to answer Claire's question, how did the ideas generally come to me? Bit by bit. I think Pratchett talked about the sleething kind of neurons of inspiration that sort of sometimes they hit you, and sometimes you accumulate them, and eventually you got enough accretion mass to make it into a story. Usually one idea is not enough. Sometimes it needs 2 or 3 to kick it off. So it just eventually lodged there, and something happens eventually. All right. Any other questions, Claire? That's nice of you. I was very pleased with that idea of the weather becoming sentient. There are a couple of other cool things in the book as well. There's I mentioned Sylvans in the reading, and they're handcrafted wooden automata, really, that are sentient, and they sort of wander around just helping people because they feel like it, which is pretty much against everybody else's rules, especially when the people in the city they end up and they try and take advantage of it or stop other people taking advantage of it, so it becomes a whole big thing. Yeah, the ideas in this book I'm really proud of, so I hope people enjoy them when they read it. We got a couple of minutes more, but I guess it's time to wrap up. So I will just say thank you very much, everyone who's tuned in to listen, and thank you in advance everyone who is tuning in retrospectively to look at the YouTube, which is pretty cool. If you've not been able to listen tonight, or yeah, get the chance to look at it later on, that's a cool thing. The next panel is, I think it's midnight, and it's neurodiversity and SFF, which I'm not sure I'm going to be able to stay up for because it's work in the morning. So I'm going to be doing that. Watching it again tomorrow when I've got a bit of time. So I just want to say thank you all for listening, and thank you to QuaranCon, who have been smashing. It's a smashing organization. It's a smashing con, and I've really enjoyed it so far. So here's to one more great day.